I've seen a lot of people comment on my videos in the past where they say, why don't you just invest everything into QYLD or JEPQ or JEPI, one of these covered call ETFs, and just call it a day? When they look at these investments like QYLD, a lot of people think, wow, I only need a couple $100,000 and I can retire and never work again. And as someone who actually retired off of his dividend portfolio, I can see the appeal. If you can cut corners and somehow, quit your day job earlier and not really need as much money as maybe you would think, it can be really appealing. And I came across this article here on Seeking Alpha from Christopher Price, and he wrote the article here titled, "Retiring Just on QYLD, Probably Not a Good Idea." And I thought he did a pretty good job in highlighting, what are some of the pros and cons of an ETF like QYLD. But as the title suggests, just planning on retiring only off of QYLD is probably a flawed idea. And it's not just, QYLD as a whole. You could look at this as like JEPQ or Devo or some of these other covered call ETFs. Just investing all of your money in one of these, I don't think it's probably a good idea. And we're going to take a look at this article, but it's not the same as investing all of your money in SCHD or DGRO or the total US stock market in VTI. It's not saying that you shouldn't invest heavily into one single ETF, because investing in ETFs is very different than investing all into a single stock, right? Because you're going to have the single stock risk. Now, I would have no problem if I had a huge lump sum of money. I would have absolutely no problem investing all of it into just two ETFs. If I had the money, I would throw it all into SCHD and DGRO and call it a day. Unfortunately, I don't have unlimited resources, so I have to get a little bit creative and kind of put together a portfolio that has a good balance of growth and income so that it meets my goals. And so in this article, he's going to talk about, just throwing all of your money in one single ETF. I don't have anything against throwing a large sum of money in a single ETF, but it's important that you understand what that ETF does and how it performs and is designed to perform over the long term. Okay, because I think that's going to be something that a lot of new investors can look at that and like, well, I would never throw all of my money into a single ETF anyways. Well, I would do it with SCHD and DGRO if I had the money. All right, so it's very, very important, and I wanted to make sure that I included that here in the video. But really quick, I just wanted to highlight this, that if you are interested in Seeking Alpha Premium, they are going to be raising their prices at the start of October. So you'll have until the end of this month to lock in your price. If you use my link in the description below, you'll get it for $214. So a little bit of a discount, but the benefit is when it comes for renewal next year, you'll lock in that lower price. Instead of having to renew for $300, you'll be able to renew it for $239. So there is that little added benefit. All right, so let's take a look at the article. The summary here is that financial planners recommend withdrawing 4% of a nest egg annually for retirement income, aiming for $40,000 in addition to other income sources. Some argue retiring on QLD is possible with a $300,000 to $400,000 investment, generating monthly income. However, long-term returns may not be sustainable. QLD provides high yield through covered call options, but past performance shows decreasing income over time. Additional investment may be necessary for stable income in retirement. So the article starts off here with, when it comes to early or regular retirement, many financial planners recommend that their clients save around $1 million or more. The idea behind this recommendation is the 4% rule, which argues that you should be able to withdraw 4% of your nest egg each year to start with a $40,000 in retirement income while keeping up with inflation. Hopefully this would be in addition to Social Security income and or a pension, because $40,000 is not a huge sum to live off of for the long haul. Yeah, this 4% rule, he doesn't mention this in the article, but this stems from the Trinity study that they did where they looked back since I believe the 1970s or something like that, the success and failure rate of a portfolio. And if you invested into the market, at what rate would you be able to, what is your failure rate in terms of living off of your portfolio? Is it 4%, 3%? And so that's kind of the history of the 4% rule. Not a lot of people know that. The 4% rule is kind of mainstream, but it stems from the Trinity study. and the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, that's where a lot of the research is, stemming from. So just kind of a little tidbit if you didn't know that. Moving on here, given the same 4% rule, a person who wanted to have $100,000 to live on for the long haul would need a nest egg of $2.5 million. For most folks, this will take decades to amass if they can amass it at all. Therefore, people think retirement is outside the realm of possibility. High yield investment in QYLD. So some folks have argued that it is possible to retire off the Global X NASDAQ 100 cover call ETF, ticker QYLD. I've seen a few YouTubers who have argued that it is possible to retire on as little as 300 or 400,000 invested entirely in QYLD. Those YouTubers are irresponsible, and that is absolutely ridiculous. I do not doubt it for a second that there's some YouTubers out there that are pumping this dream of just investing into QYLD. That is so irresponsible. Even the Motley Fool has an article arguing that this is one of the 3 dividend-focused funds that are the retiree's best friend because of the high yield. Even though it is possible to get a decent income from investing in QYLD, that's probably not a good idea to retire only on an investment in the fund, especially if that's your only investment, as the points made below will show. Yeah, guys, you don't have to read this whole article for me to tell you that don't invest all of your money into QYLD. Just don't do it. I wouldn't even do it with JEPQ, like cover call ETFs. They are a great satellite position. They should not be the foundation of your portfolio, right? You don't build a house on a sandy foundation. Building your portfolio on cover call ETFs is a sandy foundation. You don't want to build it on a sandy foundation. This fund uses a cover call option strategy to create income from the NASDAQ QQQ. Effectively, this limits the upside return because the fund can be forced to liquidate shares at a discounted price if the underlying investment increases in price above the strike price. The fund can limit the downside as well because it would not need to sell shares if the strike price is higher. In a down or sideways market, QYLD can provide a solid amount of income with share prices that may not fall as rapidly as those of the broader market. The NASDAQ 100 has increased rapidly in recent years. QQQ has seen share price growth by 137% in just the past 5 years. The 10-year return is 387%. However, it provides a very anemic dividend yield of 0.58%. Those who are looking to retire on dividend income would have to invest in the neighborhood of $8 million to throw off $40,000 in this scenario. That's why it's unreasonable. It doesn't work with just the NASDAQ. With growth ETFs, you don't invest in the growth ETFs to live off the dividend. You invest in the growth ETFs like QQQ to then amass a large amount to grow your portfolio, to accumulate wealth, and then you look to rebalance in the future. Where QYLD pursues a strategy for increasing dividend income via cover calls, its options create a yield of just under 12%. Effectively, a $400,000 investment in the fund would produce nearly $4,000 a month in income at present. This is where the internet investors come up with the idea of needing only $300,000 to $400,000 in QYLD to retire. Yeah, guys, if your mama didn't teach you that if it sounds too good to be true, let me be that voice of reason for you. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. I can't tell you how many times the Prince of Nigeria has told me that his lost fortune is mine and that I am the sole heir to his fortune. Like, I just can't, every single Prince of Nigeria wants to give me his fortune. And every time I try to send him money, but I never get the fortune. I just don't get it. What? If your expenses are relatively low because you paid off all of your debt and don't owe rent or a mortgage or whatever, it would be possible to survive in many areas of the country off of $3,000 to $4,000 a month. However, where QYLD's strategy provides some decent income in the short term, its long-term returns make this strategy problematic. So QYLD's history. If we look at the long-term price of QYLD, we see that it's lost about 25% in terms of share price over the past 5 years. years and 30% of its value in terms of the market price over the last decade. That is quite poor when compared to the 137% increase in QQQ over the last 5 years. For comparison, the S&P 500 has grown by 80% over the last 5 years. Okay, so this is my biggest critique with this article is when you're comparing cover call ETFs, you have to do the total return. You don't look at the share price. This is very much a newbie mistake on this contributor side. When you're writing this article, this is like horrible. Like this is like an unforgivable sin when it comes to comparing cover call ETFs. You do not do this. So what he's doing here is he's comparing an apple to like a watermelon. Okay. Because you have to factor in the distributions when you're doing a comparison. Otherwise, the comparison is just ridiculous and it doesn't even really matter. So in terms of the share price, absolutely, but you have to include the dividend. So when I give the final grade of this article, you can imagine I'm going to be knocking off some points for this. That means that it's effectively lost more than 2% annually when looking at the share price. The last year of distributions has provided investors with $2.05 in income for each share. Therefore, owning 20,000 shares or a little bit more than 340K worth of QLD would provide about 40,000. As the share price has gone down over the past decade, however, the income has gone down as well. Over the past 5 years, the fund has seen a decline in annual dividend income of 3.29% on average. Back in 2018 to 2020, monthly dividends for QLD were frequently in the 20 to 22 cent per share per month range. In recent months, that number has been around 17 cents to 18 cents per share per month. Therefore, an investor who held shares in 2018, for example, would have received $2.65 per share for the year. That investor would have needed only around 15,100 shares to create 40,000 in dividends for the year. Today, the same share count would only provide a little more than 30,000 in dividends. With the higher inflation experienced globally over the past 3 or 4 years, this would create an even more dire situation. So I guess the decreasing in the dividend was not transitory. Transitory. I'm sure they wanted you to believe it was transitory. No, the new reality for QLD is the share price has gone down along with the distributions. And this has to do fundamentally with the strategy of the fund where they're selling at the money compared to out of the money when looking at the call options. Okay. And that is why I sold QYLD back in 2022 and I bought JEPQ. And it all has to do with the upside potential with JEPQ, as well as the the lower expense ratio. But a little bit of a food for thought there, just to understand the differences of some of these cover call ETFs because they're not all created equal. Moving on, funding retirement with QLD. This does not mean that QLD cannot play a role in creating a decent retirement income. However, those who want to ensure that they are able to maintain their income over the long run should make sure that they don't spend all of their income in the fund that the fund throws off. Taking a 7 to 8% effective yield from the income would allow retirees to buy additional shares that could offset any possible drop in share price and dividend income from QYLD. More shares could mean similar or greater income over the long haul. Keeping the same number of shares is likely to produce frustration and a tighter budget. I think Rita here on Seeking Alpha talks a lot about this, where if you get an investment that maybe has a lower dividend growth rate, you get a higher yield and you reinvest some of that income back into the shares. And so that way you're kind of maintaining a little bit of growth. I just don't really like that because it's inefficient when it comes to taxes. You're getting more income and you're going to have to pay more taxes on it. Now, obviously, if you have it in a Roth IRA, that would be ideal. But in a taxable account, I don't really like that strategy. I would much, much, much prefer having a slightly lower dividend yield, i.e. JEPQ, and have more growth potential, have it be more tax efficient where I'm not having to reinvest more into my holding to maintain a growing dividend and not have to pay extra taxes. So that's just my 2 cents, how I look at that. For a taxable account in my situation, retiring early, I just don't like the strategy. It's just inefficient if you're I just don't like to pay taxes, right? Why pay more taxes? I'd rather have a little bit more quality and upside potential and sacrifice a little bit on the yield a little bit. So that's just my opinion. Moving on, it's possible to create a solid amount of income with a fund like QLD, but it's important to keep the potential drawbacks in mind. Those who expect the fund to pay a stable amount of income could be sorely disappointed should the share price and the dividend income decrease in the future as it has over the past decade. And I hate to break it to you, if you're long QLD, you just have to assume that the status quo will remain because they are riding at the money call options. Okay, so unless they change their strategy, nothing's going to change in terms of the trajectory of where the share price is going, and the distributions will be declining going forward because it's just the way that their strategy is set up. So in conclusion, QLD provides a high yield by capturing options income. This can give the illusion that early retirement only requires an investment of 300 or 400K. I love that he uses the word illusion because anybody that's trying to sell you this idea that you only need 300 or 400K in QYLD is being irresponsible. I'm sorry, they're just being irresponsible. However, those who want to retire early only on a high yield investment like this should be aware that past returns have led to lower income over time. QLD or a similar fund could allow people to cut back on working while having fixed income of sorts. In that way, it could provide greater flexibility for those who want to reduce their dependence on running the rat race with a 9-to-5 job. However, those who expect to set up an investment in QLD and forget it for the long run could see their income decrease over time. Therefore, retiring just on QLD is probably not a good idea. Very, very well said. It is probably not a good idea. So let's take a look at some of the comments and then we'll wrap it up here. So the first comment here, I am long QLD for many years with a substantial amount of shares, which has allowed me to retire and live off dividends. I own QLD along with many other dividend generating vehicles, including pipelines, medical ETFs, other covered call ETFs, preferred ETFs, etc. I also own many index funds to not miss overall market appreciation. I think QLD and other similar ETFs can belong in a diverse portfolio for income generation. It has worked for me. Thanks for the informative read. Now, this is a great comment because it's not doing or suggesting what the title of this article is, which is retiring just on QYLD. If you have QYLD or another covered call ETF as a form of boosting your income, but you still have a well-diversified portfolio, yeah, absolutely, an investment like this could fit in your portfolio. It's a great way to turbocharge your income, right? But the thing is you don't want to fall trapped to the illusion that you're just going to throw all of your life savings into this and you're going to call it a day. There's very few cases where I could see this working where, let's say I would never recommend it, but the only case where I could see it working is you're maybe 5 years away from Social Security and you're like, you know what? I need the boost in income. How can I bridge the gap between where I'm at today at 55 years old or maybe 58? How can I bridge the gap before I start taking Social Security at 62 or 63, etc., right? That could be a way. I could see a case where you're like, okay, you could go heavier in something like this, knowing that your NAV, your net asset value, will erode, but you understand that because your Social Security is going to be kicking in, or you have a 401k that you'll be able to access at the age of 60. Okay, so you have to have the whole picture in mind, but I could see a few anomalies there where it could actually make a little bit of sense. Another comment here, putting $300,000 to $400,000 in one investment and living off of it is insane. I learned my lesson long ago when I had a nice stock, paid a fantastic distribution, the stock price dropped into a few bucks and the dividend was suspended. I didn't sell, I basically lost it all, so might as well hang on to what it was left and see if they recover a little. They did recover after 3 to 4 years. I was lucky and learned. I do have QLD and use the dividends elsewhere. I had RWLD and sold that. Okay, so this comment is screaming, I'm a new investor and don't know what I'm doing or what I'm talking about. Well, he's talking about, so there's something. Okay, so first off, putting $300,000 to $400,000 in one investment like QYLD, yes, would be insane if that's all of your life savings, right? What he's referring to is he's comparing that with investing everything into one single stock. That, my friend, is truly insanity. Investing all of your money into a single stock, no matter how great that you think the company is insanity. Investing all of your money into SHD or DGRO or VTI is not insane, my friend. Like, that's just not apples to apples. When you invest into these ETFs, these high quality ETFs that are market cap weighted, you are investing into America. You're not investing into one single stock. Okay. And so it's not an apples to apples comparison investing 400K into QYLD, and that's all your money, versus investing 400K into SHD or DGRO. It's not apples to apples, and by no means nowhere close to apples when comparing that with a single stock. Okay. And that's kind of what I was referring to at the beginning of this video. I would be completely comfortable if I had enough money to invest and my expenses were low enough where I could just have SHD and DGRO, I wouldn't invest into anything else but just those two. Unfortunately, I don't have enough money where I'm in the position to do that. But if I was, heck yeah, I would. Like, if I was going to be working for the next 20 years and I knew that I was going to be able to amass a large enough portfolio that I could live off of, I would go 100% into SHD and DGRO. And then, as I got closer to retirement, I would reevaluate where I'm at. So don't fall trapped to the illusion of, oh, it's bad to invest all of your money into some of these ETFs. In certain cases, yes, okay, but not with the simple path to wealth with dividend investing, okay, which was inspired by J.L. Collins that I talk about on my channel. All right, the last comment here, unfortunately, it's not reasonable to compare the price return of QYLD versus QQQ and the S&P 500 as you do. You need to look at the total return here for the comparison to be relevant. Exactly what I was referring to. QYLD may well have underperformed on a total return basis, but nonetheless, that's how it should be presented. Readers here might be interested in QYLD plus a contango capture strategy and potential 15. I don't know what he's referring to. Maybe he's presenting something that he talks about. But yeah, no, he's absolutely correct when you're comparing these covered call ETFs and just dividend investing, dividend ETFs and stocks in general. You always want to look at the total return because the total return can look entirely different with the distribution or the dividend included. So that's the article. Overall, I would give this article a B, and it comes down to, the fact of when you're doing a comparison, you have to get this right when you're comparing the total return versus just the share price return. And for that reason, this article got a B. You want to make sure that you understand when you're looking at covered call ETFs like this, you want to look under the hood and see what you're truly getting. And you don't want to just go and blindly listen to some YouTuber or some article, some Motley Fool. The Motley Fool, man, like, I can't tell you how many times, like, the Motley Fool is just regular people that are contributors in the Motley Fool writing a whole bunch of stuff. Some of it's just absolute garbage, if I say so myself. Like, I always look at those articles and those videos where it's like, is this too good to be true? And some of your alarm bells, your rational alarm bells should be ringing in your head like, wait a second, something seems a little bit fishy here. Okay, so if you're a new naive dividend investor and you look at something like QYLD and you see it pays a monthly dividend, you see that it has a 12% dividend yield, you're like, tell me no more. Where do I sign up? And a lot of new investors can make mistakes and fall trapped to that. And if you watched my video from last week, you know that I'm not immune to making mistakes. And that when I first started investing, I made a ton of mistakes. And I mean, if QYLD was available when I first started investing, I bet you I would have bet the farm on it that I probably would have invested into QYLD because I was stupid back then. I didn't know what I was doing. And so it's so important that you look at everything and you question everything and try to understand what's being presented to you and if it fits into your time horizon. Remember, towards the middle end of this video, I said there's only really one case where I could see going heavy into QYLD. It's to act as a bridge between now and if you know you're going to get more income in the future. But if you're not going to get a pension or a 401k or Social Security in the near future, going all in on a QYLD is, to quote the title of the article here, probably not a good idea. But yeah, that's the article here. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope that you learned something new and that you found the video helpful. As always, everybody, I'll be back next Thursday with another article, and as always, with my regular videos on Sunday. Thank you so much for watching.